When Iranians took over the U.S. Embassy in Iran in 1979, they held 52 American hostages for over 444 days. On this day in 1981, the hostage crisis ended. But that was not the end of the story or the suffering for the hostages and their families. CBS News correspondent Barry Petersen has stayed in touch with the family of hostage Dick Moorfield throughout these many years.
And that's the way it is. Tuesday, January 20th, 1981.
CBS anchorman Walter Cronkite on the day America was waiting for.
Ended as the first day of freedom for the American hostages in Iran.
And after family reunions in Germany came the sight America was waiting for, the hostages back home after 444 days of captivity. Among them, Richard Moorfield, the consul general at the embassy, his wife Dottie, and son Stephen.
When he came out, the psychiatrist that examined him told him he should be ready to accept the fact he'll probably be divorced in a year, because he said, your wife has turned into a very strong person. And Dick just laughed at him. He said, you don't know my wife, do you? and
she
walked
was
out
already
of the
a
room.
strong person.
Yeah.
It started when Iranians stormed the U.S. embassy, furious that the U.S. gave the deposed Shah of Iran medical sanctuary. In the frantic moments before the embassy buildings fell, Moorfield hustled 5 Americans out who ended up in the Canadian embassy. Their escape from Iran portrayed in the movie Argo. Then he was among those captured after he led a half-dozen more onto nearby streets, but their escape was cut short by an angry mob.
Dottie gets through the days by filling them with normalcy, a stop at the post office.
And for 444 days back home in San Diego, as I reported in 1980, Dottie never stopped working to keep the pressure on for the hostages' release.
And just take it every day. Just take it one day at a time and look at that day as it's happening.
A visit with top State Department officials left her disappointed.
I am delighted about the briefing that we were given. Whether or not it's a unique thing remains to be seen. They're still there.
Mrs. Moorfield and other family members acknowledge that some of their dissatisfaction with the department is a result of the frustration of waiting.
And when the waiting was over came celebrations. But the last day of the hostage crisis became the first day in a decades-long battle with their own government to get compensation for what they endured. Today, not getting the compensation, not getting the attention, how do you feel about your own government?
I feel they betrayed us. I feel they have neglected us. I feel they have mistreated us.
Congress did pass a law providing $4.4 million to each hostage or their heirs and $600,000 to families. The money from fines and seizures against companies illegally doing business with Iran. But less than a quarter of the money has been paid because 9/11 families were later added in and the fund was depleted, even though Iran was not implicated in the 9/11 attack. Congress awards you money. It alters it and says, okay, and 9/11 people will now get a part of this money.
Yes.
For more than 2 decades, attorney Tom Langford has represented the hostages, trying to get them the rest of their money.
And so we should have been fully paid by now, and that would have enabled hostages to do a lot of special things that they wanted to do, provide education to their children or grandchildren, take that one glorious trip they'd always wanted to take, and they haven't been able to do it. And it's broken my heart, I can tell you.
Here they come.
Money that could have helped the hostages and their families long after the cameras and celebrations faded away.
You have to understand that they were kept in the horrible political prison in Iran. Many of them are housed right across from the torture room where Iranians, military and others were being put to death through water hoses stuck down their throat or choked, various means. And they could hear that all. And they were told, tomorrow's your day. So every time the jail cell opened, they thought, this is the last sound I'm ever to hear.
With traumatic effects that lasted the rest of their lives.
Changed his life. It shortened his life. He couldn't be in a room with the door closed. I've been in hotel rooms where I found him asleep on the floor. He's got towels laid out so he could crack the door. All of these things. I mean, we laugh, it can be funny, but it wasn't funny for him. It was panic. It was sheer panic. It was the threat of death.
And money to acknowledge the time when spouses and parents were separated, like Stephen from his father.
To me, it's just another day that I have to get through. It's not going to be any easier than any of the other days, but I hope it won't be much harder.
Somebody once asked me, how is it different growing up with this in your childhood? And it's like, well, I don't know, because I don't have another childhood to compare it to.
Dick went back to work at the State Department and died in 2010 at age 81.
Hi there.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
If Dottie has slowed down, it's hard to notice. She's active at her assisted living facility and volunteers at the BoucherCon Mystery Writers Conference. The writers created a new award for volunteers and called it the Dottie, of course. And Dick is always there.
We were married in Oakland, California, July 30th, 1955.
How long were you married before Dick died?
55 years. 55 years. And I miss him still.
And still fighting for her husband.
I've had a good life. Stephen has a good life. But that money represents justice. It doesn't represent trips or buying things or any of that. It represents justice.
And still waiting for the day that justice will be done. For CBS Saturday Morning, Barry Petersen, Durham, North Carolina.